Well, thank you again, Petter, for joining me today on this
It's
talk on.
quite all right. My pleasure.
Yes. So yeah, today talking about tactic games or tactic, which
Yeah,
is it actually tactic?
it's Tactic Games is the name of the company, while Tactic is just the trademark which we market.
Right. Yeah. So tactic and tactic games, and talking about board games and sort of the Finnish the culture of board gaming in Finland, and maybe a
Sure.
bit on the future as well. What the future holds for board gaming in
Sure.
Finland. But yeah, so on tactic, as this is sort of the largest board gaming and sort of affiliate toy company as well in Finland, sort of. But is it still Finnish? Would you say is it sort of the core of it is Finnish, and it's not sort of this international monolith just yet, but it's a Finnish still company that sort of has this sort of Finnish spirit of board making games.
Yes, that's a good question, and we are we are a multinational company which was founded in 1967 in Pori, Finland. And but I would still say that we definitely are a Finnish company. We then have our subsidiaries in many different countries. We meet with the representatives regularly. They come here from France and the UK and the Netherlands and Poland and other countries, but they require some, of course, special design to suit their own markets. And we here in Finland, the Finnish team in Finland provides that for them. So yes, we are a Finnish company, but we also service the companies in other countries that belong to the same family.
All right, right. Mm, uh, so Tactic is of course not only focused on board games, but also sort
Right.
of these toys and even books. And now you acquired Plasto, which is this toy manufacturer as well. Would you say that this is sort of is this indicative of this sort of a larger idea of sort of um making tactic something just is not only about board game, but is there anything else? Is there a new sort of is there anything else that you are expanding to now, maybe other than is there new areas to explore, so to say, still?
Well, the whole sort of focus on toys is fairly new for us. It's I would say less than 10 years that we've sort of considered that uh, uh, segment of its own for us. So that is sort of growing and we're developing that all the time. But now this is of course totally new, just something that happened this spring with this plastic company Plasto, and Plasto has their own production in the Åland Islands between Finland and Sweden, and that is now something that the Tactic company, owns. So I'm sure there will be lots of interesting possibilities with that, but the plans are not quite finished for everything yet. They have such a great selection of traditional toys, which we of course will continue with. They will, because consumers in at least the Nordic countries sort of expect to see those products in the stores when they look for toys for the children.
Yeah.
Yes. So sorry. Yes. At the moment, I can't think of anything totally new that would be sort of just around the corner. but these two, the toys and the plastic, are sort of new for us.
Right, right. So about your job, you're at Tactic now, 19 years just now. As a game designer, is that the sort of correct translation to English, would you say?
Sure, but
Yeah,
of course, it would be maybe even better to call me a product developer, because
sure.
the product development is the sort of the what do you call it? The,
Tuotekehittely.
the osasto. I lost the word.
Ah,
The sort of
mm,
department
yes.
that I work in and have worked ever since I started here. And but then again, game designer, we're all game designers, because the whole team sort of work together on everything. I direct the graphic designers, and they give their input on the game mechanics. The game mechanics are my sort of main responsibility,
Right.
but nobody does sort of anything totally on their own. But everybody sort of helps everybody out, and the end result is something that we bring together.
Right. Can you sort of walk through this sort of, because I think this is sort of interesting in a sense that what is it that sort of walk through of sort of a week or a day, so something like what is the sort of then the what it is that the sort of that team does in a sense of do you sort
I,
of just
I think
go yeah yeah
I think that instead of looking at a week or a day, I think we could look at a game, and how that sort of starts and what happens until it's sort of done.
yeah yeah sure
Okay, so the first thing that happens is usually that there is a need for a new product, and that need has been sort of noticed by either our sales team, or possibly marketing through feedback, or then from a customer of ours who sort of has realized that they need. Our customers are mostly the retail chains, both online and sort of traditional. So there's a need for a product. That need is communicated from our portfolio management team to us, the product development. And that, of course, is communicated in the form of a brief that sort of describes what kind of product is required, that needs to be developed. And there, the main sort of information and the key points are the target audience, of course. Then there's usually an idea of the price category we want to place this product in. And further, which is maybe surprising to many people, is that the box size is often sort of decided upon at a very early stage. It may change if the sort of idea of the end product changes, but when the original idea comes to the portfolio team's sort of knowledge, they sort of start imagining the end product, and in that imagination, the box size usually plays a crucial role, which is why it is also usually included in the brief that we are designing this game for this box. And we have, I don't know, some 20 or 30 maybe boxes, and then we keep one of them in mind when we start sort of working on realizing that idea. Okay.
yeah yeah that all sounds very sort of practical, right? You're thinking about like the need and then actually the box size and everything is very sort of very practical
Yes,
focused, yeah.
yes, absolutely. That is sort of everything that we work with since sorry, I'll take a few steps back. We mentioned toys and we mentioned plastic. We didn't mention books that we also
Books,
do,
yeah.
but our core business are the board games.
Mm.
And this department, the product development, we work almost totally with only board games.
Sure.
Yes.
Would you, in this sort of clarifying question, would is in this board game category, is the sort of outside play games like Mölkky and Petanque, are they included in that category? Is that, or are they their own category then?
Yeah, good question. We soon have many trails to follow here. That's a good question. We have sort of worked with some outdoor games of our own design, and they have been designed by this same department. So yes, we could see them as part of that. But then Mölkky lives its sort of own life, and
Yeah.
since Mölkky is so sort of set as a ready product,
Yeah.
it is mostly sort of marketing and maybe some other departments that work with it, and not this product development so much.
Right.
Yes. So yes, we can consider them as part of the board games that I talk about, but especially when we say board games, we of course mean we mean the card games and the traditional dice games and everything. They are all sort of the same group of products still. Okay, so let's see what then happens. So
Right.
so the need has been communicated to the product development, and the first thing we start thinking about is how to make the game mechanics. What usually something about the game mechanics are mentioned in the brief, that we need this kind of game, but not the details, not about how it's going to work, not even the components probably. So that is what we start thinking about. That is this a actual board game where we need to design the game board, and will we be needing cards, and will we usually we aim to create everything in-house, and we are very happy and proud whenever we succeed in sort of 100%. That means that often we end up buying something from the UK or from China, some plastic components, which of course may change now that we have our own plastic production as well. But up until now, ever since 1967, we have not produced any plastic of our own. So our main product, which started the company, is the Kimble
Yes.
in Finnish, which is the American Trouble game.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, sort of localized for the Nordic market originally, and still mostly for the Nordic market. And what did I want to say about this?
The
I want to say,
mechanics then.
yes, no, that's a totally plastic game. That was my point.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
and there it's also Finnish plastic. It's a company in Mäntsälä, south of Finland, that produces the Kimble game boards.
Yeah.
And so that is sort of different, since it is so plasticky, the whole
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Okay, but when we have the core idea of how the game probably will work, game mechanically, that sort of gives me the possibility to start actually sort of designing the game mechanics, not just the idea of what will happen, but actually how will everything work in the game. And at the same time, the graphic designers start working on, for example, the game board that we have talked about in our sort of preliminary discussions. And they also know sort of the core thoughts that make it possible to finalize the game mechanics, and using those core ideas, they can start designing the graphic elements that will be sort of key in the game. And then when these things gone on for some while, and we start to have a clearer idea of the actual game mechanics of the game, and there starts already to be some graphic design as well, then we'll also activate at no later than this point at least the sort of text team,
Right. Writing the
because
rules.
yes,
Yes.
yes, writing the rules and creating any other textual content that the game may need. So that is, of course, the way I see it, and actually the way the department works as well. Those are the three segments.
Mm.
We have the game mechanics, which are sort of abstract and mathematic or mathematical,
Yes.
and then we have the graphic design, which is the visual look of the game, and then we have the textual sort of content of the game. And I think that sort of creates any game.
Yeah.
Yes, then we have a buyer person who helps us source and find and actually buy the external components that the game may need that we don't
Yeah.
ourselves. Yes, but otherwise we have to sort of think of tactic games as a printing house. We know that board games are mostly made of paper.
Yeah.
And that's what our factory does as well. We print all the components, and then we sort of refine that printed material in different ways and create everything from the scoring pads for Yahtzee,
Yeah.
and the paper money from our Wanna Bet games, for example, and the sturdy cardboard game boards from, for example, our Alias games, and the rules sheets that go into any of the games, and the playing cards that we pack in the 55 card small boxes, and then the game cards that go into our trivia and word explaining games. Everything comes from the printing machine and is then refined with different machines into all of these other components. Yeah. And especially not just the game boards of the sturdy cardboard, but lots of other components where we also love to use the cardboard. And they all come then finally from the same die cutting machine, or one of the three die cutting machines that we use. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for all that really interesting stuff.
Yes.
In that to that sort of, because you also take in ideas sort of for board games from the outside, right? There's a within your site, there's sort of this application, or this sort of where you fill in, you have an idea or something where you want to
Yes.
contact you.
Yes, you're right.
So how much of this sort of process and these games that Tactic makes, how much of it is sort of in-house ideas from the ground up, and how much sort of comes in then from the outside of ideas from outside developers?
Good question. It is not every year that we actually make a game that has been designed by a private inventor. We get lots of ideas from private people, mostly from Finland, but also from other countries. And as I said, it's not every year that one of those actually works out. But every couple of years, some sort of a random person who has happened to come up with an idea has actually landed on something that we feel there is sort of potential for, and then we realize that together with the person. But then we also work with sort of professional inventors who we meet mostly at the games fairs around the world, and who present their new games to us, the ones that they feel could be a fit for our selection. And we have a sort of some long relationships with these inventors, so they know us very well as a company, and they can sort of see that a game idea that they're working on could be a good game for tactic games. So they sort of can sort of put that aside and show it to us before some other companies, and that's sort of how it works. And of those games, we usually have one or two every year. So we're talking about 2 or 3 games that are sort of have originated somewhere else, and we do bring around 20 or 25 new games every year. So as you can see, most of it is sort of done in-house.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So with these sort of with tactic, and then compared to Peliko and Lautapelit, two sort of other bigger in Finland, sort of the board gaming three giants. But does tactic, in your opinion, in your mind, have this sort of, because if I think about, for example, Lautapelit, I think about games like big games like Eclipse and Agemonia and Nations, and then Tactic. Do you think Tactic has this sort of brand for itself? Is it like party games or Tactic, or are there, in your mind, does just any game fit into Tactic for publishing for Tactic, or what do you think?
No, there are clearly games that we wouldn't consider sort of adding to our portfolio, and that in itself tells you that we do have sort of an idea of our brand, and we consider it to be something, and then not to be something else. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And if we try to describe what tactic sort of what kind of brand tactic is, it is very much a sort of family oriented company, and we have a very wide selection of educational games for young children. That is sort of a very big part of our portfolio, and also of our brands, of especially the main brand, I mean.
Yeah.
But then we also have a separate brand for which we develop games which are closer to what Lautapeli sort of specialize in. So these sort of more of a gamer kind of games, which are not for normal families, but possibly sort of the gaming family, but otherwise hobby players.
Sure.
Yes. But the family oriented and sort of a little bit lighter, and with always some kind of focus on the fun part of entertainment as well.
Sure.
Yes.
This sort of educational games, and this reminds me of you had this sort of, I think it was last year, as I was researching, you have this idea of I think you conducted Lapland University, or
yes,
for the sort of idea of creating a game, this sort of based on with the idea of having this sort of game about sustainability and ecology of our planet. And you reach out to Lapland University, and together with them you created this game, trivia game, Mother Earth Äitimaa game.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. that was really interesting. I was wondering whether you have any sort of idea, what do you sort of think about that sort of process, and if you are interested in doing something like that again, and thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was a very positive cooperation. What Lapland University especially made for us, and I think it was that was the most important bit was the content creation,
Mm,
because they had several different learning programs that clearly touched upon this sort of environmental uh, part of the world, and many of those were interested in helping out with creating the game. And the game comes with 300 picture cards, where each card has a question that sort of touches on the theme of that picture, and most of them have answer options where out of which you choose one to be the correct one. And the game is mechanically also very nice, I would say. But to my recollection, that mechanic was completely built in house.
mm,
But we very early we landed on the fact we wanted to make that game co-operational or cooperative, and which is of course quite nice, because also saving the world
yeah,
is something
yes. I
that you
mean,
have
yeah,
to do
that
together
fits the
with.
team. Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. So that's very nice, and we were very happy with the cooperation with the Lapland University as well. So when you asked if we could consider doing something like that again, definitely.
Mm,
It
mm,
just needs a sort of right project,
yeah,
and then sort of making the plan together on how
yeah.
to actually reach the the end result in time.
No, the starting point, the need is there then.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yeah, that's it. That's it. Always, basically.
yes, yeah.
Mm,
But that was really interesting. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Mm, so, what would you say, sort of, maybe this is maybe a bit like going beyond just tactic games, as an overall like board gaming as a this designer and product sort of manager, and what do you do, what you do in what would you say are the sort of trends now going on within like board gaming, like the current newest most like hottest board games, sort of what are they, what can they be about? I think like cooperative,
Mm.
that's sort of one big, but that also has been sort of, been, I wouldn't say been done, that's been done, but that's sort of a thing that, an idea that has been going on. But do you think there are sort of current trends within like themes or something like this?
Yes, there are things happening. I would say that the cooperative games have sort of reached a level where it isn't sort of strange or different anymore
Mm,
that the game
mm,
is cooperative. But some 5 years back, it was different. Then people weren't sort of used to a game being played like that, sort of the wide audience, I mean. Yes, so that is something that feel is still happening, that it's becoming more and more common and accepted. So I would mention that as something that is still going on, even if it's been around, of course, many years. Yes. Otherwise, we do notice that the consumer habits sort of change, and of course, that is also something that affects sort of trends and how
mm,
the companies develop their new products. And one thing that has happened is that faster and smaller games have won much more sort of area for themselves and
mm,
pushed out some of the longer and heavier games
mm,
and bigger. So now small and light is something that most consumers want to grab often before or instead of a bigger and slower game. Yes, those are some things that come to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a funny. Reminds me of how that's is our attention span just getting shorter as we go. Is this the fault of also the fault of these
And people
social
don't.
media generation and
Yes.
but yeah, I do get that point of view where as someone who does play a lot of board games and this sort of like it is something that I dread when thinking about board games to bring to, for example, gathering with friends. How long does this take to actually bring to the table and then take it out of the table? And it is an actual consideration there, yeah, for sure.
Yes, and I think it's really cool when you run into a game which sort of looks very, very compact and sort of small, and when you realize that it's still sort of a full game, and even if it plays in half an hour or less, it can still sort of be a good experience. And of course, there was an example of a quick game which sort of blew everybody's mind, and it was not a small game, but a big one. But I'm talking about Seven Wonders,
Yeah.
what 10 or 15 years back, and that was a quick game, but sort of a really full game experience. Yes. So yeah, those kinds of trends that going towards quicker and smaller.
That is interesting. Then that sort of brings me to the sort of thinking about future, thinking about then digitality, like digital environments are becoming a bigger and bigger thing among board gaming and tabletop gaming even. Thinking about something like Steam, the amount of games, for example, on Steam that are just like board game ports are increasing by the year constantly, and people are thinking about the sort of ways to play board games digitally now more and more. But that also sort of the idea is intriguing here that it's is well first just a question is with tactic, do you have any sort of these sort of plan, because you are very sort of physical based idea with like with these games and books and that are actually played like outside and like this, do you have any sort of plans, or has there been a discussion about sort of expanding into any realm of digital, for example, putting alias on a digital platform, for example, like a website, for example, like something like this?
Yes, actually, 19 years ago, when I was when I started working here, it was as part of a project where we sort of examined different possibilities with digital sort of parts of it, and that's sort of when we started with that. The actual project was discontinued at some point, but the interest of course sort of stayed, and that time between 2005 and 2010, all the big companies sort of meddled with these kinds of things, but all of them also stopped actively doing it after sort of around 5 years or something. But then again, all of these companies and all other companies probably as well still see it as a possibility. That is something that can be used, and we do have our own department who develop mobile apps under the tactic umbrella.
Yeah, apps as in these sort of kinds of supplementary apps to board games, or just apps,
yes,
games
yes,
in them of themselves?
different kinds of things. Not sort of pure games that would be played on their own, but yes, as you say, they sort of work together with the physical product. But our plush brand, Lumo Stars, has been around for some 5 years and doing quite well. And that brand has their own app as well. So when you buy a plush toy, you can scan the code that comes with it, and that the toy figure, the plush itself, will appear in your app, and you can then use it in the mini games. And take care of it like a sort of a Tamagotchi kind of thing, where you sort of feed it and make sure that it sleeps enough and stuff like that. So that's sort of a big app that works together with that whole plush brand and world, for example. But we are also one of the partners for this NextR project that has started in the University of Tampere. And it is quite interesting to see what that team can sort of come up with. But it is quite possible that the digital elements will be found much more in the future from our games. Possible.
Yeah. It that has sort of been always interesting to me, as I found games like Code Names, I think, is one, and there are others that just don't come to my mind right now, but they themselves, the developers and publishers of those games like Code Names, have put their game basically up for like, they've created this website platform for that. And there's little lobbies where people can just play that game online, and that's always been sort of an interesting thing to me, that game developers themselves may basically make the game available for free, but it's obviously it's not the same experience, never is, when you're sort of doing this with digital things instead of actually physically doing, with I think with the pandemic, it actually sort of heightened this as well, of investing in this idea.
Yes, I do agree that those can be very sort of useful for the consumers, and that they are a marketing tool that help the physical product. But yes, there has not been confidence in the management here, that they have seen more risks with offering sort of more digital material. So we are not sort of very strong in that area, but it's not impossible that it could change in the future. And your example was very apt with the Alias game, which is of course our sort of main brand in the board game segment, and it would be sort of cool with
I would say so, yeah.
With an open website open for anybody, where you could actually somehow play the game together.
Yeah, and as you said, I do think it as a sort of marketing tool, right? It is a marketing tool in the end. Sort of that is sort of what it is. You're putting that out there in the sort of idea that more people get just basically raise brand awareness, right? Through that also, that more people get access to it that way. Yeah. Yes, going back a bit to the sort of, because that sort of hybrid thing of I do think that is still like a growing thing, where not only are there sort of these supplemental apps, but I can see where in the future there might be sort of these, well, it's not really the future, but thinking about games like Hitster comes to mind as a sort of example that uses like existing technology of the Spotify code, the Spotify app, to sort of create a game around that, and things like this, where it's a sort of a hybrid, where some parts, some actual parts of the game itself, like the components, have been replaced by this sort of digital medium.
Yes, we feel that it's very important that it is sort of made into or made in a form that in no way obstructs the playing experience. It has to be totally seamless, and then it can be all right. Most people who sort of try using digital elements say that it's great, almost as good as the physical thing. So it is still not as good as the physical thing.
Yeah.
So yes, that is the challenge.
Yeah.
That at the moment, hybrid often sounds like that you would have to use a mobile phone, and most people, I won't say that's necessarily true, but lots of people want to put the phones away and then sit
Yes,
down
yes.
with the board game.
Yeah.
And so that of course makes it very challenging to find the best solutions
Yep.
for how to improve
Yep.
on what we already have using the new technology and not making it weaker. Yes.
No. Yeah, I definitely do agree there that there is this sort of very narrow thread that you have to navigate with this. For example, with that example that I mentioned, it's if Spotify would just now just disappear, that game would be, you wouldn't really do anything with that game, basically. But I mean, you could still technically play it, but it's like a major part of the game just disappears. Things and then like relying on these technologies then brings that risk, obviously. And then
Yes.
what you said, that people do actually just want to put their phones down for once and play with
Yes.
actual cards and material.
Yeah. It's
But yeah.
usually a great feeling, not
Yeah.
not sitting with the phone in your hand and instead focusing on what's in front of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Hey, I wanted to say something. Yes, one company who really did sort of or are doing well with the digital bit is Veikkaus, of course. That that sort of changed completely when everything became available online
Yeah,
or through the app. I think that's
yeah,
almost sort of amazing. That
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's. I mean, yes. I mean, as a sort of person who does research this sort of that
Mm,
gambling, it's. I mean, just the idea of that. What the phones did, and what first online gambling sort of when it did really become popular with phones. I would say it's more maybe about even the phones now than just like online gambling. It's about getting gambling on your phone
yeah.
also.
Yeah.
And having these apps. I think it is becoming a huge problem now. For in many cases, for example, in the States, in the United States, where there's a huge problem of these with some of these apps, for example, and advertising gambling as well. But because it's like constantly available right now, because it's in
Mm,
your phone, and yeah, I would say it's just radically transformed that sort of
mm.
how people gamble, how people basically partaking that activity. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
but I think they sort of managed when bringing this to the interested people, they
mm,
made it easier,
yeah,
of course,
yeah,
and usually the digital elements of board games don't make usually
mm,
the game easier. We did use a scoring app
yeah,
for Seven Wonders back in the day,
yeah.
and so that was sort of made a little bit easier maybe with the app.
Yes,
Yes.
things like yes, I'd say that there definitely is sort of a place for these kinds of things. Uh, I mean, I do think that it's just the fact that some games work better as a video game. Essentially, that's what the sort of transition is there when taking board games, translating them to digital media. Like it does sort of step from that board gaming into digital game into a video game, and some games are just better as a video game, I would say. When and it's I can't say when that sort of happens, but it's when you bring in mechanics and math and calculating and things that you have to do mentally, sort of have to do constantly,
Sure.
and track research and track components with hundreds and hundreds of components and things like this, then I mean, yeah, it is up to personal uh what people like. Yeah, for sure. Some people
Sure.
like Gloomhaven, like a big large game, but also got translated into a video game. And some people are definitely in the uh like thought they do consider that Gloomhaven is a better that the digital game of it, the version that is available is the better version sort of that game than the board game. But yes,
Yes.
again, personal opinion.
I also own both the physical original Agricola game
Mm.
and the digital one by Uwe
Yeah,
Rosenberg.
yeah, yeah.
And must say that even if it's really enjoyable to play the big physical game, it is just so very, very handy
Mm.
to play the digital one, where you can do your move and then put it in your pocket and then pick it up again later that same day
Yeah.
and see what has happened and play your move. So if you're not in a hurry, then that digital game is sort of really great. And I would say that the for the big games, the setup is
Yes,
such
what I
a
mentioned,
major
yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never set up the game Gloomhaven, but I can
Mm.
imagine that it's sort of a major project to get it set up.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that is just the fact that you really cannot get over in a sense that's I like they did that sort of supplementary apps for it that sort of tracks all things and all things. Agamoni
Mm.
also does this, has that sort of app with it that is helping players track things and things like this. But it's still getting like a game like Gloomhaven into the table, actually bringing with you along somewhere. But it's possible, and I genuinely do believe that people do enjoy that once it sort of hits that table and you have a good group and you're actually playing. And I think it's probably an awesome game to play actually then. But yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think also that sort of controlling something complicated
mm,
is sort of very satisfying. Uh, uh, Seven Wonders was not very complicated, but
yeah,
it was still sort of a big game, and I think that was what sort of grabbed lots of people. That you started controlling it better and better, the whole system that sort of made it work.
yeah,
And of course, that was what the good players were better at controlling that whole complex
yeah.
system. Yeah.
I do think that sort of modularity of like Seven Wonders that it brings, because the rule, like the mechanics are very simple in the end, like
Sure.
how the game then functions and goes around. That's sort of very simple and easy to grasp. But then
Yes.
because there is modularity there with like what factions you play, what civilizations, and then people have made their own civilizations as well, like homebrewed civilizations there, and that sort of when you, it's like near infinite replayability in that sense, where it's that affects that so much that what civilization you play, and the game still stays the same, but you may play completely differently based on your civilization and your leader now with the leaders expansion. But
Sure.
yes, the
Sure.
sort of simple of the simplicity of the mechanics, then I do think there is that sort of
Yes.
elegance of it. I do really like Seven Wonders.
Yes. Yes. Me too. And we have this. This is a handmade box, but the crime scene games that we have for some 4 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, been making, they are an escape room kind of play at home game,
Yeah.
and I think that game as well when it grabs a lot of people. People sort of lots of people have written to us and that was great. We can't wait to play the next one. So they have actually sort of enjoyed it a lot. And I think part of it is that it's also sort of complicated and it's a little bit difficult to sort of to go through the motions that make it sort of go forward the game. But when you're playing it, when you control that and manage to go forward in it, it's sort of satisfying just because you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is it's a interesting. I think that games can work like that, and for that reason, sort of interest some players. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's a sort of my final question is then, is there anything that's sort of exciting you now with what's in maybe product? Maybe you can't tell it all, but is there something that's
I can give you a little hint of sort of the main thing that we're working on at the
okay?
moment.
Yeah, sure.
It is for this fall actually, so after summer, and it is sort of a traditional trivia game. Yes, with questions and answers, but it's a huge game. It comes with 1,200 cards.
Whoa, that's
Yes,
cards, but not is it like questions or all of them?
4,800 questions.
Gee, that's a lot of.
It's
Okay.
a lot. Yes, and there's a very nice sort of a simple but different and cool mechanic with players teaming up and answering questions together, but not the player in lead. That player you can't team up with, and they can't team up with anybody. So once you move into the lead, you
Yeah,
forfeit the right to team up with anybody else. Then you have to make it on your own. So
that
that's pretty
sounds
cool.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an overlying theme, or is it like Trivial Pursuit type or?
More of that type that the content, those 4,800 questions, they try to cover the whole world.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds cool. Yeah, the idea, the concept of the sort of leader being that sort of
Yeah.
and in a more
Challenging position.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. And I could give you the name. It's called Trivia Quest.
Trivia Quest. Yeah, I'll keep
Yes.
my eye on for that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So
Yes.
that's a cool one.
I also saw, as I was looking through you have a YouTube channel as well, Tactic, and I saw this absolute, like, I was just amazed at mini Mölkky, where that
Yes.
sort of finger-sized Mölkky, where you're sort of flipping the sort of, that was just
Yes.
really cool.
Yes. Yes. Mölkky is also a really good game. Really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there is like, I mean, like thinking about like adult Finns and like, you know, adult, but like at Finns past the age of like 10, like nearly all of them have played Mölkky. So like it's so like ingrained, like at some point you play Mölkky.
And I think that even maybe something like 85 or 90% actually enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
It's a small percentage who don't want to play it, but most people do.
Thanks, thank you again. Really, I really did enjoy this talk, and thanks for coming in again.